Hello, my name is Laurent Gabriel, and I'm the owner of the Lead Professional Dog Training. I'm located in Winter Park, but I serve all of Central Florida. So let me give you a little information about myself so you know where I come from, how I learned, and the whole nine. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. I remember the days when my father would, as we're riding on the road, he would tell me that anytime I would see an animal on the ground, I would cry and say, I'm going to help that animal. Fast forward, in Jacksonville, I was living with my mom, and we found out that my neighbor was a dog trainer. And my mother was saying, hey, well, if you want to be a veterinarian, why don't you go talk to the next door neighbor? With me being a kid, I was a little shy, but I rustled up enough courage to go over and ask him, and an old school guy. So it's like, yeah, see what you're made of. So for the next 6 months, I did kennel work. Why did I do kennel work? In my opinion, I think kennel work is one of the most important parts of learning how to be a dog trainer, how to interact with the dogs, the approach, because you're dealing with different types of personalities. So whether it be fearful, whether they are aggressive, whether they're traumatized, the happy-go-lucky ones, the one that we all love, but you don't always get to deal with that. 6 months later, he gives me my shot, and he teaches me the basics of all how most dog trainers learn. Of course, loose leash walking, sit down, stay, the whole nine. But there's a twist. He told me, I'm going to give you a dog, and no matter what the problem is, you're going to figure it out. My first dog was a 140-pound Rottie that was aggressive. It was more so territorial, lack of socialization, but I didn't know that. I'm a kid. So anybody that he didn't know, he would go after. So, of course, he's at what we call boot camp, what I call training camp. And he goes, here you go. And I kind of laugh, and he goes, well, you got one or two options. You can train a dog and you can get out. So I can do it myself, but in order for you to become the trainer that you want to be, you have to be able to take on these dogs. No matter what is thrown at you, you got to figure it out. So I figured it out. And that set the journey to where I'm at now. Fast forward, I worked with him for another 10 years. And surprisingly, I didn't go to school for veterinary medicine. I actually went to school for computer science. I was actually the first student to get a network security license or certification from college. Total opposites, right? It's okay. What I did do, though, is I kept my dog training going. When I graduated from college, I moved to Orlando back in 2005. 2007, I decided I'm kind of done with corporate America, so I need an exit plan. Dog training was the thing. I've always wanted to own my dog training business. Why not start? So me thinking that I've worked with him, I'm in Central Florida, I'm a dog trainer, but no one knew who I was. So what I would do was I would go to different veterinarians, doggy daycares, food shops, you name it, and I'll parade around different dogs. Heck, I would even go to downtown farmers market in Winter Park when they used to have it in a small located area, and I would take my dogs and I would parade them in that area. Perfectly well behaved. It wasn't until 2008 I actually got my first dog. And then from there it took off. Now, again, me being young, me being cocky, and I would take on anything. Didn't matter what it was because I had something to prove. But what I didn't know was there are other types of training. Let me explain. So I wanted to get Deb more into, say, the protection, because face it, it's a macho thing, but I enjoy doing decoying because you got a good workout. I love to work out, so I'm like good sweating. Not to mention I get to play with dogs. Right? So I called a guy that was located in Chiliota, and I was upfront with him. I said, "Hey, I'm already a dog trainer, but I'd like to learn because I heard that you're great at what you do." So he said, "Yeah, come on over." So this is where the first time my ego was shot. So I have this lab. His name was Brock. Love labs. Okay. And so he comes out and he shows me his shepherds, and he has a Malinois. His Malinois was just phenomenal. And then me, I'm like, oh, let me bring out my lab. And I brought my lab out, and he looks at me. He goes, "That's great for home obedience, but if you're going to get into competition, you need to forget all that you just did, and you need to do it this way." That was my first touch of performance training. So it was more motivational, a lot more motivation. So the use of a reward system, whether it be a ball, whether it be a toy, whether it be treats, whatever the dog likes, you use that to get the best out of the dog. Now, not every dog can do that. You just have to find the right dog, or you have to be the right type of trainer. So as I started learning the whole competition obedience, that was a lot more fun, because now you get to see the difference in the dog's behavior. It's more upbeat. You have to be you. Like most people don't understand, like the dog feeds off of you. And when you're in competitions, 9 times out of 10, if the dog messes up, it's because you miscued your dog. So the dog reads you. You guys are a unit. The dog reads you. You read your dog. And you guys go for the best. I started for my 30th birthday. I wanted to complete an Ironman. And one of my teammates introduced me to a guy by the name of Godfrey, God rest his soul. And me being a decoy, which is basically a sparring partner for the dogs, if you put it in that perspective, I was able to meet him. So I introduced myself. I gave him a little bit of my background and what I've done, and asked if I could learn from him. And I remember that day. So first day I went over, we were bringing out a green dog. So a green dog is a dog that doesn't have much experience. And I think the dog maybe had 2 or 3 sessions. And he said, "Look, I'm going to show you the difference in bringing out a dog and shutting down a dog." So he brings the dog out, and it was in a blind, which is kind of like a corner. So a corner that the decoy backs into, and there's like shades that go over. So when the dog comes up, there's that corner, he's inside the blinds, and the dog's like, don't move. If you move, I'll bite you. That's what that is. So he was behind a fence, because sometimes when a dog is not used to that type of scenario, the dog can be a little unsure of himself. So he sends it off, and the dog starts barking, ruff, ruff, ruff. And he kind of bends over a little bit, and then the dog kind of slows down, the voice lowers, and then he just slightly backs up, and then all of a sudden you just see this explosion. And right there, again, me being young, was so intrigued, because I've never seen anything like that. I decoyed for him for 3 or 4 months. I can tell you what, those 3 months were very, very valuable in that aspect of learning of dog training. Because regardless of what you do, you can always learn something from other trainers. So fast forward, I finally got to meet a guy by the name of Phil Holscher. Now, Phil Holscher is the one that taught the very first trainer that I worked with how to become a good decoy and for schützen and performance. So I got to meet the Grand Master, which is pretty cool. And Phil has a list of accomplishments that it's unbelievable. So I worked with him for 3 or 4 years. And through him, through repetition, I became a national decoy. When you're working with a working dog, a true working dog, versus a home pet, the animal or the mentality is totally different. You have your sport, ones that are good for sport, and you have the ones that are good for defense. So defense would be your police dogs, your military dogs, and the sport dogs would be like your schützen, your PSA. I'm talking from a protection standpoint. They're a different caliber dog because sport dogs are meant to bite equipment, and the other dogs are meant for biting humans or protecting the force or the platoon. I had the privilege of being able to work for him for years, 3 or 4 years. And I still, from time to time, I try to go back. I've been in a while, but the goal now is to be able to take my own dog and compete at the highest level. So what I've learned over the years from working from all the trainers, it's only one thing. It teaches you, I've learned, it taught me how to become one with the dog. I mean, there's so many different perspectives and thought processes and you name it, everybody has tried it. What I do is I use what will get the job done. And that's why I'm successful.